As Flavius gazed upon Rome with eyes that had seen too much, he felt a sorrow deep within his heart, or sadness for both himself and his beloved city. The once vibrant streets of Rome or Eatner lay silent, as if the world itself paused in mourning its grandeur lost to time's relentless march forward. In 470 AD, Rome's greatness was already waning. A mere shadow lingered where it had stood proudly for centuries before him, or testament not only to the fragility of human endeavor, but also as an elegy sung by history itself through countless generations. Flavius' father, Gaius Flavius Marcellinus, once walked these very streets, and was a man who had felt Rome's heartbeat within his chest, or an eagle among sparrows in the Senate of old. He understood well that each stone here bore witness to civilizations risen and fallen. As Gaius' tales echoed through Flavius' mind, memories painted with vibrant colors brought little solace against an encroaching dusk twilight before Rome's decline reached its zenith in the coming decades. The forum where Julius Caesar once declared his vision for a republic now lay asunder. Columns that had stood proudly beside emperors crumbled under the weight of neglect and barbarian invasions, their marble faces etched with tales not just local but world-spanning, or testament to Rome's erstwhile glory. Flavius walked through these hallowed grounds where orators once held court amidst a sea of eager ears. Now the air was thick only with dust and disrepair, punctuated by echoes that had long since faded into silence, a requiem composed for an empire's sunset. The empty marble squares bore no footprint other than his own as he contemplated how quickly power could fade from even the mightiest of hands when faced with relentless external pressure and internal decay, each defeat in battle by Gothic hordes of thorn-piercing Rome's prideful side. He passed beneath archways where senators once debated war, and peace where now only shadows danced upon crumbling frescoes that had captured the essence of an era when Roman legions expanded borders from Iberia to Britain's chill north, their disciplined ranks a bulwark against encroaching threats. As he meandered through empty corridors in his ancestral villa, once opulent abode, where family portraits zero trails of triumph and tragedy adorned the walls with scenes that had shaped Flavius' very soul, each portrait a visage frozen on time's canvas. He remembered tales told by grandfather about their ancestor Brutus, or named now synonymous not just within family but in history as one who struck down Caesar himself. Inside the villa was an echo chamber for Rome's grandeur, where once laughter and wisdom flowed like wine from a never-ending cup. Here Flavius felt he could almost touch those days when Roman virtue seemed indomitable, or time before inflation had sapped riches into thin air as much as the Visigothic threat loomed. The city's once mighty aqueducts, an engineering marvel that brought life-giving water to Rome's many fountains and bathhouses. Now these great arteries of civilization bore silt instead, lifeblood sapped by time itself as much the Visigothic threat. Outside his door, Flavius' modest gardens no longer held life in abundance, but whispered tales through withered leaves and parched earth. Here nature seemed to lament her own loss of Rome's former embrace, an empire that had once commanded the seas now found itself adrift amidst an oceanic world moving beyond its grasp, where maritime trade routes were opening up new frontiers for those not born under a Roman eagle. Even as he walked these neglected paths of his home city, Flavius felt Rome's heart skip beats, pulse that had once quickened in every triumph and now faltered with each defeat. The Senate convening less frequently was but an omen to what awaits when even governance could not stem this low poison eating away at its foundations. The marble of his ancestral shrine, which bore inscriptions praising virtues that had once defined Roman identity, patria potesters empire. Flavius stood in front of his ancestral shrine for a moment longer than necessary to let himself become enveloped by its grandeur, even if it was just an echo from days gone past, now that he had no living kin left within these city walls, but only the memories and legacies entrusted into his hands. The marble once stood proudly as testament to virtues etched not merely in stone but woven deeply into Rome's societal fabric, pieters, dignitars, or the lifeblood of an empire that had for centuries coursed through the veins of every Roman citizen and their rulers alike. Yet today seemed to him as though even these virtues dwindled within his grasp like fine threads fraying under relentless tension, leaving behind nothing but wisps of smoke at best when tried in vain against fate's uncaring hand. As he turned away from the silent sentinel that had watched over generations now long gone to dust, Flavius heard his mother's voice whispered across time through recollections and tales told by grandmother on stormy nights, or murmur of encouragement as she would recount stories not just about Rome's glory, but also her own family struggles against the elements that had shaped their fates. It was then he understood how deeply rooted this bond with his ancestral land ran, a love and loss so profound it seemed to mirror life itself, her cycle of seasons coming full circle before yielding once again unto renewal or decay as dictated by unseen forces beyond the veil between pasts. Today's walk took him down cobbled lanes that had seen centuries unfold, senators debating in hushed tones under flickering torchlight, generals strategizing battles with a ferocity only matched when facing their own demise. The clamor of markets vibrant and bustling like an orchestra playing symphonies crafted from countless transactions, lifeblood flowing through every transaction as if it were pulsing in his veins too. Today, however, he felt only echoes, empty pavements reflective not just the city's failing light, but more so its own fading heartbeat against encroaching shadows of uncertainty that lay beyond Rome's reach, an empire no longer a dominion over land and sea alike as distant nations now held sway, their currencies flowing into foreign coffers while traditions found themselves outcast in favor of new world orders. The gardens which had been his grandmother's pride lay forgotten amidst neglect, once lush greenery withered under sun's unforgiving gaze like fading memories struggling to find form amongst ruins that refuse solidity after all eternities spent in permanence, as if Rome itself was Relin 01 ### solution. Chapter 2 began at the break of dawn, where Flavius could hear faint strains from a distant harpist's fingers caressing strings and plucking melodies that had once seemed to dance with life in times when his grandmother would gather her family under this same moon. Today's music felt discordanter dirge of the world, slipping away as Rome faced an uncertain future, where even prosperity was not beyond reach for those who embraced change and welcomed new ideas into their hearts like seeds in a fertile earth awaiting rain to grow forth from beneath. As he walked deeper still through forgotten paths that had once echoed with children's laughter now replaced by the solemn footsteps of his own contemplation, Flavius reached an ancient fountain where water trickled like weeping spirits mourning what they could not recover, stark contrast to days when its waters flowed abundantly through Rome's veins. Here too lay carvings on nearby obelisks depicting scenes of triumphant generals and victories now seemingly as distant in memory as the gods themselves, though once celebrated with great fanfare, for even deities seemed to have retreated from public adoration into mythic realms where legends held sway more than history's unrelenting march forward. Inside his modest dwelling or structure that had borne witness generations of familial lineage but now stood as little more than a shell for the soul it once encapsulated, Flavius settled beside an oil lamp casting wavering shadows upon leather-bound tomes and scrolls. These were his inheritance, texts whose knowledge he sought to preserve against ignorance like one safeguards treasures from decay when time itself has become rel. Flavius closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself to be enveloped in the comforting darkness of his study or sanctuary, where he could commune with history and its whispers from ages past. The oil lamp's soft glow flickered above him as if echoing the dimming light that once illuminated Rome's grand edifices, leaving behind only shadows to dance on ancient stone walls in his mind's eye. He had heard tell of a secret garden hidden within these very ruins, or place where nature reclaimed her rightful dominion amidst relics and memories long forgotten by the world he knew today, save for this solitary caretaker of history's flame. Legends whispered that at its heart lay a single tree bearing fruits as sweet as ambrosia, living connection to an era when gods walked among men in splendor and sorrow alike. With the last echoes of twilight mingling with his thoughts, Flavius decided today was no ordinary day for exploration. It felt akin to stepping into another life entirely, one where time flowed like meandering streams through marble-laden valleys and over hills cloaked in emerald robes. He rose from the chair that had supported him as he pored over texts by candlelight for countless nights, or faithful companion to his quest of preservation against ignorance's decaying grasp on humanity's collective memory, much like how legends held sway in mythic realms long after public adoration faded from the gods themselves. The ancient city lay beyond these walls, Its stories were a treasure trove within his reach, but as distant now to him as tales of Olympus, when mortals failed to honor their deities with reverence and remembrance for fear they might lose power over fate itself, or because such matters had become trivial in an age enraptured by the relentless march forward. As he walked through Rome's decayed marvel, each step upon crumbling Kabbalist 011 stones felt like a gentle caress from history's own hand, faint but unmistakable beneath his feet, as if sheathed in fine silk or velvet. He approached the fountain once alive with laughter and music, where now only water trickled weepingly over moss-covered edges, like spirits lamenting their lost grandeur. To Flavius's solitary reverie among these relics of past glorious stark juxtaposition against his own personal journey from youthful vigor into the quiet reflection that age often brings. The fountain's melancholy song seemed almost sacred as he knelt beside it, recalling a time when water cascaded with such vitality through Rome's arteries. Its waters had sustained life here not just in body, but spiritually too, since the very essence of this city flowed from every drop. As if drawn by some unseen force beyond mere happenstance, Flavius noticed a faint outline on an overgrown stone wall near his feet, hieroglyphs depicting not triumphant generals or tales of conquest, but humbler cynosure farmers' toil and simple joys in day-to-day life. It was as if history itself had curated this garden for Flavius, inviting him into an intimate dialogue with the silent stories etched upon these stones, since before his own ancestors set foot on Roman soil, or connection across time that bridged not just years, but souls like ivy entwining a forgotten obelisk. He followed this path of stone and shadow, past overgrown statues whose marble once gleamed under the sun's embrace. Their faces were as blank to him now as they had been centuries, ever indifferent witnesses, or perhaps even protectors keeping vigilant watch over secrets hidden in plain sight. The garden grew denser with foliage and more alive, yet somehow seeming less grandiose than the city's remnants he'd left behind. Here nature reclaimed her realm amidst ruins where once only monuments stood taller testament to Rome not in decline, but rather evolving into something else. Amid this verdant cathedral, Flavius discovered an altar partially shrouded by ivy and moss that had been concealed for ages. The inscription upon it read in hoc loco fructum et memoria, suggesting a place where fruit could provide sustenance as well as memory. It was here he remembered tales of ambrosia, like as Flavius's gaze drifted across this living mosaic of nature and remnants. He felt a profound kinship with those who had walked these same paths before him, or shared humanity that transcended time itself. Settling down beside the ivy-cloaked altar, under an azure sky peppered with stars like scattered diamonds across velvet darkness, Flavius closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. His mind wandered to ancient times, when emperors would stroll these very gardens, pausing at this spot not just for respite, but perhaps seeking wisdom or guidance from the gods themselves, or whisper of connection still palpable beneath layers of earth and vines. The inscription, in hoc loco fructum et memoria, seemed to echo in his heartbeat, urging him towards understanding that which was both tangible sustenance and intangible legacy left by those who had come before him, a place where the past fed into present life as surely as fruit feeds. With a gentle exhale, Flavius opened his eyes to find himself enveloped in silence broken only occasionally by distant bird calls or rustling leaves that seemed almost like applause for this sacred communion with history. He reached out tentatively and touched the cool stone of an urn nestled at the foot of a grand statue, half swallowed by roots, its surface etched not just in Roman numerals, but possibly also with messages or dedications from long ago travelers like himself seeking solace here amidst nature's reclaiming embrace. As if guided by an unseen hand through time's labyrinthine corridor, Flavius walked along the path meandering between the statues of old guardians and gatekeepers, their stony gazes offering silent counsel on how best to honor those who once held dominion over these lands. He paused before what looked like an ancient sundial partially buried in moss, its gnomon casting a delicate shadow across time-worn inscriptions. The hours of day and night now seemed inconsequential as Flavius contemplated this convergence between his own transient footsteps and those that had once filled these gardens with life. Sunbeams trickled through canopies, illuminating patterns on fallen leaves like miniature frescoes painted by an invisible artist to commemorate the beauty of impermanence, a reminder from nature itself how even empires fade into memory while its essence endures in something new. In this sacred space, where past and present intertwined, Flavius understood that he was but a visitor who had come seeking solace, or perhaps answers to questions unasked. Here, within these green embrace, this verdant cathedral of histories, Wispus found not just restorative quietude for his weary soul. As twilight descended upon the garden and stars blinked awake in their celestial dance, Flavius felt a sense of peace settling within him like dew on morning grasses. Perhaps this was what it meant to be at one with history, to feel its pulse beneath his fingertips as he traced the contours of ancient walls now held aloft by nature's patient hand. And so, under a sky full of stories written in constellations that had guided travelers through ages past and into Flavius's own present moment here, upon this sacred earth or hallowed place, where the veil between epochs grew ever thinner with each heartbeat, he shared it with Rome's eternal memory. With a contented sigh, Flavius whispered his gratitude to history itself for its silent teachings, and then allowed himself to sleep beneath this canopy of time-woven tales, each dream an echo from the garden's fertile soil, where once stood marble giants, now returned as humble flora that fed not just bodies but souls across centuries. As night deepened, cloaking everything in a gentle embrace, and starlight filtering through ancient leaves like soft shadows of time itself, Flavius surrendered to the arms offered by this living monument or testament to humanity's enduring connection with its own history as it evolves into something unrecognizable yet familiar. Here within these verdant walls, where nature reigned supreme over stone and myth intertwined like ivy upon an old obelisk, he found his soul's resting place or garden of peace, in which the past lay cradled gently among green tendrils that whispered secrets only felt rather than heard. It was here that he had unearthed not just artifacts, but also fragments of lives once light or potter's wheel from a forgotten artisan, Rem 0320 to 5,108,967 Eitinger, or an engraved piece where initials were etched with love for another whose visage had faded into the annals of time. Flavius held these treasures close as he pondered their stories, marveling at how they resonated within his own being, connecting him to a lineage far beyond blood or birthright or shared humanity that transcended eras and empires alike through the silent witness of history. As Flavius traced lines in dirt, where once had stood pillars majestic as they thrust skyward before crumbling into dust, he felt an affinity for these forgotten mortals whose whispers were no longer carried on winds but now seemed to rustle through the leaves around him. In this place of convergence between past and presenter garden that bore both marble relics turned humble flora and timeless tales embraced by roots entangled with history's heartbeat, found a mirror for his soul amidst green tendrils, cradling secrets not spoken but felt. The stars above began to fade as dawn approached, ushering in the promise of new light, while night's embrace waned ever so softly around Flavius, and Rome's eternal memory merged into one horizon where past met present under an azure sky that bore witness like a grand tapestry. As he rose to greet another day, his heart swelled with gratitude for the lessons bestowed by history, not just of dates or events, but experiences resonating within every fiber of being, or call and response between humanities, saga etched into nature itself, where time was a river flowing through generations. With each morning, Flavius found himself returning to this sacred earth anew, his soul's resting place amongst the verdant walls that served as both shield from modern tumult and bridge across epochs, or garden of peace cradled gently by nature's whisper, where time lay not only preserved but also reborn in every bloom. And so he ventured forth to uncover more, for each discovery was a thread woven into the fabric of this living monument that held humanity's enduring connection with its own history as it evolves yet remains recognizably familiar. Here within these verdant walls, where nature reigned supreme over stone and myth intertwined like ivy upon an old obelisk, Flavius felt his spirit echo through the ages, or historian, no longer just a keeper of stories, but now also as one who lived them. As he prepared to leave this hallowed place, where epochs mingled tenderly with each heartbeat shared he with Rome's eternal memory, Flavius whispered an ancient greeting passed down through countless generations, or word of gratitude for the silent teacher that was history itself. With a gentle sigh and eyes reflective like still waters from which wisdom flowered beneath sunlight's gaze, he departed to carry forth these lessons into his world beyond this garden where nature reigned supreme over stone. For Flavius knew now the past is not something dead but alive with whispers of what was and promises for tomorrow, or gentle reminder that as long as there are stories, history will continue to cradle humanity's soul among green tendrils woven through marble giants returned anew. And within this hallowed garden, where the veil between epochs grew ever thinner with each heartbeat, he shared it with Rome's eternal memory. Flavius found not just rest for his weary body, but also a nurturing cradle for his spirit, or testament to humanity's enduring connection that evolves yet remains unmistakably familiar as history whispered on. As Flavius stepped out of Rome's eternal embrace into his home village in Campania, where olive groves kissed azure skies, he carried with him a treasure trove not just forged from stone and marble, but woven through the very fabric of time. His journey had been longer pilgrimage across lands that history itself seemed to breathe life into anew each day as seasons changed their faces, like actors upon stages forgotten by men yet remembered in tales told around campfires whose embers danced with truths and dreams alike, where the past whispered its secrets through rustling leaves. In Campania's heart lay a small town called Pompeii before it was swallowed by Vesuvius. Wrathful fury in AD 79, a world paused mid-sentence as if time itself halted to savor the moment that fate had chosen, when suddenly everything changed. Flavius remembered walking down cobblestone streets where life bustled like a wellspring of vitality, until ash and pumice fell from an angry sky. He recalled his father's tales as children of Rome's grandeur in its zenith days, when gladiators fought for glory, senators debated the course of empires under marble pillars that had withstood time. Now here Flavius was again amidst ruins, but, unlike any forgotten city, this place held whispers from both his ancestors, and there's an eternal dialogue between past lives shared beneath sunsets that painted history in strokes of gold, crimson, and amber hues, as if to remind all who visited just how ephemeral the present really was. In Campania's embrace he had found a different understanding. Here, at the crossroads, where ancient paths converged with modern life's vibrant pulsar world humming its own rhythm, distinct yet reminiscent of Rome's heartbeat, that once echoed through marble halls and grand amphitheaters. He had learned to listen as he strolled past olive trees heavy with fruit ripe for the picking. These were his ancestors' hands, guiding him back into a life where nature reigned supreme. Yet respect was paid in equal measure, a testament that history's heartbeat never truly ceased. In this village of rustic charm and enduring spirit, he had unearthed not just the memories, but also his purpose. For Flavius realized as each Summer 04 set cast long shadows, time was both teacher and student to all who dared listen closely, a reminder that in every ending there is a beginning. He found himself walking amidst history's tangible echoes, where the past lived on not just through stone, but also within human hearts, still beating with tales of love lost and triumphant, tragedy turned into legend by time's unforgiving yet fair hand. As he walked further along cobblestone paths worn smooth from ages passing feet, or path that had led generations back to their origins before stepping once more onto dust-laden earth where his family lineage began, Flavius knew this journey was about much more than mere discovery. It became a voyage inward as he recognized the reflection of himself within ancient Roman eyes gazing into mirrors that were frescoed walls and statues carved from solid marble, fair stories intertwining with his own like ivy-clasping stone, binding him to an era where gods walked amongst men. Flavius would spend days here in Campania. He could see himself as a man not just of Rome, but one who drew strength and wisdom from the soil that fed both body and soul, his heart attuned now more deeply than ever before with this hallowed ground, to feel history's pulse beneath his fingertips. He found solace in understanding how stories wove themselves into existence's fabric. Each tale as essential to life itself as the threads that held together a tapestry of humanity, a rich and vibrant portrayal where time flowed like water, sometimes calmly meandering through ancient canals built by hands long turned to dust. It was here amidst nature's embrace he would write his own chapter in the enduring story, for Flavius had become a historian not just of Rome, but also of Campania, guardian who penned tales that honored those past souls and celebrated life as it unfolded before him. His words transcribed more than facts or dates. They were imbued with the essence of lived experiences. His stories became bridges across time where readers could wander freely through as twilight-kissed Campania, with its dusky hues and stars, began their nightly dance above, Flavius would find himself lost in thought beneath an ancient olive tree that had witnessed centuries pass by its gnarled branches, a testament to endurance much like the tales he aimed to preserve. The air was often filled with the earthy scent of rain-soaked soil and blooming jasmine, creating ambience for his contemplations on history's intricate dance between nature and mankind, or muse that whispered secrets into Flavius' ears as he sat beneath her. One evening, after a particularly enlightening day spent in the ruins of Pompeii, where echoes of ancient life seemed to reverberate through his soul with each discovery unearthed from its ash-covered embrace, Flavius decided upon writing an epistolary piece, a letter never sent, but forever imprinted, on parchment. The words he chose were those that resonated most profoundly within him. They spoke of the intertwining destinies with Campania's soil, and how its fertile arms had nurtured not just his body, but also fed into a deeper connection to humanity's timeless struggle against fate itself. His letter began by recounting tales from local elders, or narrative tapestry woven through generations of shared knowledge, that was as much an act of remembrance as it was homage to the resilience and spirit found within Campania's people during tumultuous times. He spoke fondly of festivals, once vibrant with music, laughter, and unity, or contrast against later years, when silence had become a more frequent visitor than applause in those hallowed grounds, where now he sat alone yet felt profound company through the stories that lived within him. The heartfelt letter detailed his personal journey of self-discovery on this sacred land, revealing how it led to an epiphany regarding history's role not merely as a passive recorder, but rather as something more intimate and interactive, a dialogue between the past and present. His musings extended beyond mere dates or grandiose events. They touched upon daily lives intertwined with nature's cycles, their joys, sorrows, triumphs mingling seamlessly in a shared experience that transcended time. With each stroke of his quill on the parchment before him, each letter shaped by desire to honor these experiences and preserve them for future generations, as he had now come to understand they were meant not just be observed but felt, Flavius found himself reflecting upon how stories, like seeds sown in fertile soil of empathy, could blossom into understanding across the gulfs that divides eras. He imagined a world where readers might wander through Campania's memories as freely and vividly as if they were standing amidst its ancient people, their spirits guiding them on an exploration of shared humanity beyond their own lifetimes, connecting with the essence that was both personal history and universal narrative. As night encroached upon day's remnants, his letter reached a crescendo in depicting how Campania had been more than just land. It shaped souls as they wove through life's intricate patterns, much like the threads of fate themselves. He expressed that he too was an integral part of this ever-growing tapestry, his own thread now contributing to its richness and texture by capturing these echoes in words, their permanence a legacy not just for Rome but also Campania itself, where once gods had roamed amongst men. In the quietude that followed dusk's retreat into darkness, Flavius felt an indelible sense of purpose as he committed his thoughts to parchment. It was clear now more than ever what lay ahead for him, a calling not just to document, but also imbue history with human emotion and experience. His tales would serve a higher goal, allowing readers from distant lands or future times to touch the pulse of Campania's heartbeat through his prose, enabling them an intimate encounter where they could see themselves reflected in another era's life, as if looking into their own mirror image across time. And so he penned more than mere words, with each sentence flowing onto the page beneath flickering candlelight, or gentle stream of consciousness intertwined within historical fact. His storytelling became an act akin to casting nets upon still waters for fish that would be invisible yet forever captured in memory. He spoke softly into oblivion about this profound as Flavius's quill danced across parchment in a ceaseless waltz of black upon white. He felt as though his soul had been unshackled from its temporal vessel and soared into eternity itself, a place where stories like rivers flowed endlessly without borders or constraints. The candlelight flickered with the rhythm of time passing, each sputter a reminder that history was not static but alive, pulsating in every heartbeat, echoing through ages long gone and those yet to come. The room he wrote within had once been infrequented by travelers seeking solace from their journeys, or place where tales of heroism mingled with whispers of fates unkind, all woven into the fabric that cloaked his father's estate in Campania before it crumbled under Rome's ambition. The walls bore witness to footsteps on marble floors and laughter now silenced by an empire burgeoning beyond their ancient Horizero NS. They felt as if every brick, each echo of a conversation or clash that had transpired within them held the breathless suspense before revelation, and with Flavius's prose he intended to give life once more. The next chapter in his manuscript detailed how Marcus Aurelius himself sought refuge under their very roof after returning from campaigns on distant frontiers. Herein lay a connection that transcended mere geography and temporality, a bridge spanning the chasm between past lives lived by those who had shaped history with iron will. In this chapter Flavius wrote of Marcus Aurelius as he rested in their humble abode, tired eyes reflecting wisdom untapped yet yearning for solace, that only understanding minds could provide each other, a silent communion between a man whose thoughts sought the tranquillity beyond his conscious mind. As night's veil deepened and darkness held dominion, Flavius penned down an imagined dialogue wherein Marcus Aurelius found respite in their stories of daily life. There was kinship to be discovered between a Roman emperor seeking peace within these walls that had once been his own. The narrative unfurled like the leaves carried by Campania's breeze in expected, tender moments, where Flavius imagined Marcus Aurelius sharing tales of battle and leadership with those around their hearth, a man who walked through fields so lush that they could almost forget he belonged to an era predating even Rome's foundation. The emperor spoke not just as the voice from history, but became himself, within this fiction or testament, to Flavius' ability to summon souls across time, granting them presence beyond their physical forms and constraints of mortality. Flavius wrote about how his guests would listen with rapt attention. Faces lit by flickering candlelight bore expressions as if witnesses on the threshold between worlds, where one could gaze upon spectres robed in togas or armor, conversing and laughing just a heartbeat away from their living selves. It was an ethereal tableau painted with words where time held no dominion. Herein lay his purpose as he wove threads of history into the tapestry that would be preserved for future eyes to find themselves in these recounted pasts, drawing a line connecting themselves not just through their own histories, but those who had once walked paths parallel or divergent from their journey. As dawn's first light crept stealthily across his studies, horizon a gentle herald of the day to come that would bring more life and stories than any single soul could fathom in a lifetime, Flavius felt an overwhelming sense of duty intertwined with gratitude. He had been entrusted not just as chronicler, but also guardian of tales, too often left unspoken, their whispered secrets now given voice through his pen's toil. It was a privilege and burden that bore the weight of eternity on its shoulders, her narrative flowing like wine from Campania's vineyards into cups brimming with remembrance. The manuscript grew, each chapter an act in this unfolding play where Flavius acted not just as scribe but also director. He knew that his audience might never tread these hallowed grounds or hear the echoes of their ancestors' footsteps within them, yet through him and every reader who would later find solace here, a shared humanity was forged. Campania's heart beat strong beneath layers unseen, but felt in each turn of phrase. He had become custodian not just to memory as Flavius's quill danced across parchment in a rhythmic cadence that mirrored his heartbeat. He delved deeper into Campania's untold stores or land where myth and history were interwoven like the threads of fate. In Chapter 9, The Weeping Vine, Flavius found himself amidst rolling hills, cloaked in morning mist, as softly spoken tales began to emerge from a venerable olive tree whose gnarled branches stretched towards him with silent entreaty for remembrance of its storied past. Flavius approached the ancient arboreal guardian and knelt down beside it. His hands traced a long weathered bark that seemed to pulse under moonlight like a heartbeat long sustained through ages, untold, echoing tales lost beneath time's relentless march. Each leaf whispered of forgotten civilizations that once flourished here, a testament not just to the land, but also its peoples, indomitable spirit against the ever-changing tide of history. Underneath 09, The Weeping Vine, Flavius began his chronicle, capturing echoes from a time when Campania had been more than mere soil and stone. It was where gods walked amongst mortals as readily as any man or woman in the Forum Romanum might have done. Here lay tales of divine interventions that shaped empires, whispered promises etched into sacred stones now barely discernible under centuries. Pater. They were secrets Flavius was destined to reveal, or narrative duty passed down through generations before him, and one he would bestow upon the eager ears of posterity. The morning sun ascended higher, casting a golden hue over his manuscript as if to bless each word with its own light. It felt like guiding spirits were at work alongside Flavius, himself a conduit for voices that had once wrought and wept aloud in the very same soil, as he chronicled tales of valor, love lost on battlefields where Campanian soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder with legionaries from distant Gaul or Britannia. His pen flowed effortlessly, as if moved by an unseen hand that directed him not just through time, but also across heartlands parallel and divergent. The olive tree's tears, though silent now in the sunlight's embrace, had once fallen like amber rain upon this very ground during times of strife, when words failed against sorrow, or period where Campanian fields bore witness to both bountiful harvests and harrowing famines that threaded despair through generations. Flavius wove these stories with a reverence for their gravity, his role as narrator transcending mere record-keeping. He was the bridge between then and knower guardian, whose duty extended beyond preservation to illumination of Campania's soulful heart that beat strong beneath layers unseen. It became evident through Flavius's diligent labor for truth and memory, as his quill continued its dance upon time-worn vellum with a purpose far greater than itself, for manuscript was not simply growing. It was evolving into something ethereal that transcended the physical. His words captured in this chapter were now part of Campania's enduring legacy, tales so potent they seemed to pulse through his very veins, compelling him forward as he recounted sagars where gods and mortals mingled like kindred spirits seeking solace under moon-kissed skies. As noon approached, with a steady hand in the sky above, manuscript's pages now filled to brimmed capacity held stories of love that bloomed amidst adversity, tales of sacrifice imbued within every droplet from Campania's heart, olive oil and wine flowing as freely for celebration or solace alike. Flavius recorded, with a poet's passion, the chronicle where human resilience found its zenith in this cradle. Each word he inscribed resonated like an anthem of enduring spirits that refused to be silenced by time's erosion or testament through his scribe-like endeavors. In recounting the tales where Campania's sons and daughters forged alliances with foreign entities, Flavius captured their shared humanity amidst diversities of culture. It was a narrative mosaic reflective not just of individual journeys, but also communal evolution or collective identity woven from myriad threads that formed the resilient fabric Campania wore proudly. His stories echo as Flavius's quill danced across parchment under the gentle caress of twilight. He wove yet another tale that would soon become part of Campania's enduring legacy or narrative, where even in darkness there was light to be found. The story began with two souls, a woman named Livia and a foreigner, by trade known only as the merchant from distant lands. Their paths had never crossed before, but fates are often entwined within Campania's fertile embrace. On an evening when laughter mingled freely with the scent of rosemary in her garden, Livia encountered him while he was lost amidst a sea of vibrant grapes, each cluster telling its own story before it became wine for another, celebration or solace to carry one's sorrows. He spoke not just words, but also through his eyes and hands that carried the scent of many ports yet unseen by Campanian shores, which told tales no ink could capture as potently as they did within Flavius's heartbeat-confused chronicles. Together under a canopy woven from leaves and dreams on an ancient hillside where olive trees whispered secrets of resilience to those who would listen, Livia learned the merchant's stores, not merely his trades, but also tales he had heard that traveled far beyond Campania's sun-drenched borders. As their bond deepened like roots seeking sustenance in nourishing soil, they found common ground amidst diversities of culture and shared a dance with destiny beneath the moon's watchful gaze. In Flavius's tales, he celebrated this unity as two spirits finding harmony within themselves, or testament to Campania's sons and daughters who once sought refuge in foreign realms but returned bearing gifts of understanding back into their homeland, the richness born from diversity's crucible. The merchant had brought with him not just goods, but also new ways to perceive beauty within challenges. He taught Livia that adversities could be allies when faced together, and solitude was a choice rather than destiny for lonely hearts seeking connection amid the tapestry of existence. Their love blossomed in secret during times where even shadows dared not reveal their presence, as they navigated through lives governed by societal norms that often sought to silence such unions between different strands of humanity's sprawling web. Yet here was a tale within Campania's chronicles, or love so potent it defied the boundaries imposed upon them and transcended mere affection into something ethereal, like fireflies caught in an endless dance on warm summer nights, that refused to be extinguished by fear or fate. As seasons passed, their chapters of struggle intertwined with fleeting moments where sunlight broke through the canopy and kissed the marrow reminder even darkness was ephemeral. So, too, were the shadows cast upon their path as they journeyed onward together. Their tale became one that whispered promises to other hearts in Campania who dared look beyond mere survival. It spoke of a different kind of triumph wherein love and understanding found sanctuary against the backdrop of adversity, blooming with every challenge faced side by side or beacon for those searching. The merchant's homeland called him often, offering promises as tempting as Campania's olive oil was robust. Yet their hearts knew that such a return would mean severance from the solace found in one another, and thus they remained steadfast within each other's embrace, or love story etched into history by Flavius's devotion to his craft. Their bond became more than an alliance of souls. It was part of Campania itself, a reflection not just of individual journeys, but also the communal evolution that had shaped them all along this fertile land where gods and mortals sought refuge and shared humanity beneath moon-kissed skies. The chronicles bore witness to their legacy as Flavius continued recounting tales through his quill. Every story he penned an ode to resilience that flowed like the Campanian ribus, deep and unstoppable in its passage towards horizons yet unknown. In each word lay a testament of enduring spirits whose echoes resonated within those who would listen long after twilight's last gleam, ensuring their love story was not just heard, but felt through the very essence of Campania that breathed life into such tales, her narrative mosaic reflective as much of in chapter 11 of their shared chronicler tale, not just penned, but lived by Flavius and his beloved Alora, amidst fields that bore witness to both sun-kissed midday vigils and stolid contemplations under the vast expanse, where even Diana might have paused in her eternal chase of beauty. Their story unfolds with a gentleness as delicate yet persistent as Campanian breezes. It was during one such twilight reverie that Flavius, ever mindful of Alora's affinity for the serene and poetic aspects of existence, conceived an idea to transcribe their shared experiences into verse, a testament not only to love but also a mirror reflecting the spirit of Campania itself. With delicate hands guided by earnest passion, he began inscribing tales upon parchment as if his soul danced between words and in quells. Each tale was an ode, weaving into being their unspoken desires for unity beyond temporal constraints, or legacy that might endure through the ages. Alora observed her husband's fervent dedication to crafting a narrative of love as timeless as Olympus and yet imbued with mortal tenderness, understanding his intentions were not merely to immortalize their affections but also to celebrate Campania's gift, her land, where the confluence of human experiences melded into an unforgettable essence. Within her heart that beat in synchrony with Flavius' ambition, she found solace and inspiration. It was as if their love story had been etched within Campanian soil itself, each grapevine entwined around ancient walls, a testament to the endurance of communal bonds. Alora knew that even beyond her own years in this worldly realm, they might continue journeying together through dreams and memories as vivid as any tale Flavius could conjure with quill on parchment. As dawn approached one particularly clear morning, the couple found themselves wandering along via a pair, pondering their own passage of life or path that had led them to intertwine not just hands but hearts in a bond as deep-rooted and enduring as Campanian olive groves. The air was filled with whispers from ancient stones beneath the cobblestones. They spoke of ages when Romans marched upon this land, leaving footprints that time itself could neither erode nor forget, her testament to an era where strength and resolve were forged in unity as solidly as any marble column erected within Campanian sanctuaries. Flavius paused beneath the shadow of the Pantheon's arch, contemplating how his own life had become intertwined with that of Alaras as if they were but two souls entangled in destiny thread since their very first meeting beside Circus Maximus. The echoes within its vast dome resonated as an affirmation to the depth and purity of his love, a reminder it was not just personal affection he endeavored to immortalize, but also the embodiment of collective human endeavor against all odds, or beacon for others who might seek guidance in their own journeys. Alora shared stories she had gathered from local oracles and learned elderly folk, tales that flowed through generations like Campanian rivers carving paths across the landscape. They carried wisdom gleaned not just from divine inspiration, but also everyday resilience, a mosaic of human spirit prevailing over adversity. In their shared chronicle, Flavius and Elora found purpose beyond individual fulfillment to be custodians of a legacy that honored the communal tapestry woven through Campanian life itself. They understood they were not only recounting events, but also encapsulating an ethos where every struggle was faced unitedly, each endeavor in harmony with nature, and fellow souls shared humanity cradled by moonlit skies above a fertile land rich in history's whispers. On evenings such as these, when the sky wore its velvety mantle adorned with celestial jewels, they would sit on fountain of public baths, ancient steps or relic from times immemorial, where citizens once sought refreshment and fellowship amidst shared experiences. The cool night air carried their whispered dreams to the stars that stood sentinel over Campania's restless beauty, each star a silent observer, as if they too held court in this. In Chapter 11, Flavius and Alora had stood together as guardians of tales, their bond deepening with each shared memory under Campania's embrace. Now came a time for rest. Stillness settled upon them like dew upon the ancient vines that clung to Rome's ruins near, be a reminder of continuity amid change and decay alike. As Chapter 12 unfolded, Flavius would often find himself drifting into reverie by nightfall after his day's work as a humble scribe within the grand library that housed Campania's wisdom. His thoughts were always with Elora on their tranquil walks to and from her abode perched atop Monte Carvo, where they had first uncovered echoes of history etched into every stone. One evening's journey was no different as the dusky sky began its slow descent toward nightfall, when Flavius' thoughts turned towards Elora in his mind with a fondness that often left him breathless, or sentiment not solely reserved for her but shared by all who cherished these moments. The cool air nipped at their cheeks, yet the warmth of companionship blossomed within them like an undisturbed lotus awaiting dawn's caress. As they settled upon a time-worn bench near fountain, public bath, or place where generations before had mingled in joy and sorrow as freely as water once did, therein Elora spoke softly of her grandmother, who'd whispered secrets not just to Elora, but also into the ears that followed. These stories were like threads woven through time itself, tales spun from courageous deeds against overwhelming odds and quiet victories in daily life, are testament to human resilience as much as divine providence, for gods had smiled upon them too often when they most needed it. In their shared chronicle of Campania's past lay the seeds of a future where history was not merely observed, but lived by each soul that walked its paths, where every struggle and triumph became an anthem sung in unison, echoing through valleys green with grapevines and vibrant hues painted across ancient frescoes. Flavius listened intently as Elora described her grandmother's journey from a humble farmer's daughter to one of the leading voices during Rome's golden age, a life that mirrored their own, where love was both shield and spear in navigating worldly tribulations, a narrative not unlike Flavius himself. As night enveloped Campania, like its mother cradling her children to slumber's embrace, the two custodians of legacy sat together, a tableau vivant against time's relentless march forward. Elora would trace patterns in the air with a finger as she spoke tales that transcended mere words, stories where gods played their parts but never overshadowed human agency and kinship's strength, which was felt pulsating between them like an undeniable heartbeat of communal spirit or legacy they were both determined to honor. Their dialogue wove through the tapestry of bygone eras, with reverence for those who had walked before and a hopeful gaze towards posterity, as if their own lives could add just one more thread in an ever-expanding mosaic or story where Flavius's heart was etched into Alora's soul through shared dreams of purpose beneath the watchful eyes of constellations that had silently observed Campania since time immemorial. As they parted ways, with promises to revisit their cherished narratives under both daylight and starlight's gleamer promise as steadfast as Rome's enduring edifices which stood defiant against the sands of centuries past, a pledge that each step upon Fountain public bath would carry forward not just water but also wisdom, echoed in their joined whispers tonight. Flavius and Alora understood they were custodians more than chroniclers, their legacy one of unity with nature's cadence and a shared humanity that no earthly power could sever, for as long as the stars watched over Campania, stories told in hushed tones would continue to ripple through generations. And on nights when evenings turned their canvases into masterpieces of luminescent artwork, when moonbeams danced across ancient stones and whispered secrets from lips long past yet ever present within the hearts that beat in tandem with Campania's own, then they knew Flora Flavius and Alora found themselves beneath a sky that hummed with celestial secrets as they stood atop Mount Vesuvius, gazing into its smoldering crater, sacred place where spirits are said to commune directly with the earth's heart. It was here their fates had intertwined. He, an artisan who sculpted beauty from marble, and she, a keeper of stories that breathed life through spoken word in Campania's grand amphitheatres, or meeting, ordained by shared reverence for the natural world as they sought to capture time itself. They had learned together beneath the twin oaks of Fountain public bath, where Rome's ancient waters whispered of beginnings and enduring resilience, their fingers trailing over cool marble relics that bore silent witness to a city's rise from humble origins, a reminder of how impermanent was the power they sought. Their journey had brought them through verdant valleys, where wildflowers carpeted landscapes in hues as vivid and fleeting as Campania's own history, each petal a promise to honor tradition while embracing change or balance only achievable by walking hand in hand with the cycles of life. One evening had led them into an enchanted forest where fireflies orchestrated bioluminescent sonnets that echoed Alora's tales, casting a spell upon listeners who felt as if they were stepping through time itself, for sensation Flavius knew all too well in his own work. They had explored the ruins of Pompeii on days when shadows lengthened and the sun bowed low over ancient streets still etched with echoes, imagining lives lived fully under skies that watched their every decision, knowing these stories were more than mere history. They breathed as part of Campania's soul. As seasons turned, Flavius carved a marble bust so lifelike he feared it might startle its subject awake should she be in dream and waking alike, Alora's eyes reflecting the depth of shared histories that spanned millennia. The statue became their silent sentinel, an ever-present witness to promises made as dusk settled upon Campania's lands with a tender embrace. Their love was like wine poured from terracotta vessels, deepening and richer in the moonlight that caressed its surface. They discovered shared dreamscapes where mythic creatures roamed, granting them visions of harmonious futures shaped by their union's strength. These communal experiences were akin to stepping into tomorrow's history, with every heartbeat and breath a legacy not just for themselves, but the land they adored so dearly. Flavius, once timid in his craft under Rome's watchful eyes, now stood unapologetically as both an artist of marble and a chronicler of tales that danced upon Campania's tonsure, guardian whose legacy would outlive the stones he shaped. Alora found her voice amplified not just in grand amphitheatres, but within each word shared under starlight, weaving narratives into existence as tangibly real to those who heard them as if they were spun from Campania's own cloth of life. They understood that their story was part of a larger tapestry, mosaic, where every individual thread held the power to transform when woven together with care and intention, much like Flavius' marble artworks or Alora's tales, which united hearts through shared experience rather than mere observation. Their pact was one of perpetual remembrance, their covenant that ensured their spirits would dance across the heavens, themselves as guardians who had once lived, loved deeply amidst Campania's embrace, and whose echoes within these ancient stones still resonated with purpose beyond mere existence. Thus they promised to return again under both sun's gaze and moonbeams that dappled their path to revisit the mosaic of life etched upon this land, ensuring Campania's stories continued as seamlessly into posterity as water flowing through Fountain public bath. They knew then that in each other lay a mirror to history itself, one which reflected not only who they were but whom their beloved landscape had always known and felt themselves to bear custodian of unity, stewardship for the earthly realm beneath them wherein every drop of water told its own tale. And so under nights in chapter 14 of their journey through time and memory within Campania's embrace, our guardians found themselves at a crossroads where history whispered secrets directly into their hearts, or place known as Pompey's House of the Silver Wedding. It was here that they felt an unmistakable kinship with the souls who once dwelled within these very walls during one fateful evening's celebration, now enshrined in ash and pumice beneath their feet, or night, where laughter mingled freely with wine as two lovers joined under a sky of stars. As they stood amidst the remnants that echoed tales from an age long past, Ilara sensed her spirit intertwine with those who had danced and sung in these halls before the mass-silent communion, felt deeply within their core, as if each heartbeat was a drummer's rhythm accompanying the lullaby of history. The guardians knew that to return once more they must bring forth this shared experience into Campania's present day, henceforth becoming bearers of stories untold and lessons eternal, a bridge from past joy to future enlightenment. Their journey led them next through the shadowed corridors where echoes bounced off fresco-adorned walls in ancient dwellings, now silent but for their footfalls. They traversed towards Villa of Propier's gardens, that once offered solace to a queen and her consort, their love story forever rooting itself among the vines. Here, within these timeless landscapes where nature had been sculptured by human hands as meticulously as any marble artwork created in their honor at Campanian baths, they felt an overwhelming sense of continuity and purpose or promise that, despite eras fading away like the setting sun upon Roman sandstone steps. Underneath 02983-147, watchful eyes on a night when stars seemed to shimmer with their resolve as if celestial spirits themselves cheered them forward, they ventured forth into Scorum's cave or hidden gem, where ancient echoes resonated within the cavernous depth. Here lay secrets veiled in darkness and time's embrace. Here was a place of introspection that beckoned with whispers carried on cool night air, suggesting they peered deeper into Campania's soul to unearth truths buried beneath civilizations, past her journey not just through space but also across the realms within themselves. It took them until sunrise and beyond in their quest for understanding, as each step forward was a brushstroke on an ever-growing canvas of consciousness, where history's shades were blended with personal revelations, or tapestry woven from threads drawn across the expanse of human experience. Into this realm they delved beneath Campania's surface to commune at Eruption Cave in Pompeii. Here lay a silent testament carved not by hands, but by nature's untamed fury, a natural amphitheater where once voices had soared and spirits leaped before an audience of one. As they ascended towards the heavens from this hallowed ground with their shared memories as currency for empathy between epochs, a new chapter unfolded within them. These guardians now perceived themselves not merely preservers, but also creators, artists tasked to revitalize Campania's storied heritage through the very essence of human connection and compassion. Within this eternal dance between then and now, they returned again upon a journey along ancient pilgrimage paths, such as those leading from Noller's heart, or path trodden by footfalls that had inspired tales of love across generations. Here the guardians were reminded not only to safeguard but also cherish these storied trails and their significance within Campania's soul. Their odyssey brought them next into a realm where water whispered secrets, ancient fountains of Forum Bath, once vibrant with the soundtrack of shared humanity as they cleansed not just bodies but also spirits in communal ritual. Here at Campania's very lifeblood lay reflections upon which modern hearts might learn to echo. It was amidst these waters that our guardians pledged renewed commitment. Their presence would act as a constant, ensuring the stories of Pompeii and beyond continued through each droplet's journey, or promise made not just in words, but also felt within every gurgle against worn stone. Within this sacred the guardians of Campania's soul gathered, as twilight draped over their ancient city like a velvet cloak, hues of crimson and gold reflecting off Noller's cobblestones, or canvas painted by time itself. In the heartbeats between lightning flashes that momentarily illuminated forgotten frescoes along the pilgrimage paths from which they embarked earlier in their journey, a deep hum resonated within each of them. It was as if echoing through history's corridors and beckoning forth voices lost to time. This night had been marked by revelations or profound understanding that the very essence of Campania's legacy lay not just in its ruins, but also in their shared humanity and enduring bond across ages, untarnished by epochs or calamities. As they stood upon a hallowed ground, where once great thinkers pondered and poets dreamt beneath starlit skies, the guardians felt a kinship with those who had roamed this earth long before the collective breath that transcended centuries in silent conversation among souls intertwined by destiny. Their steps guided back to forum baths, fountains now whispered tales of unity and renewal, their waters still holding the murmurs from countless hands immersing themselves within its embracer baptism, not only for purification, but also as an oath taken under water vows. The guardians listened with a reverence that spoke louder than any decrees or proclamations ever could. They heard the promises made by past generations, now their own to fulfill and extend into futures yet unwritten. As night deepened its hold upon Campania, bringing shadows long enough for tales of olden days to be told beneath a canopy of stars that had witnessed empires rise and fall, the guardians felt an awakening call not just from their heritage, but also within themselves as custodians tasked with weaving new threads into the fabric of Campania's enduring saga. They understood now more than ever before how to actively participate in this eternal dance between then and now, each stride upon Noller's pilgrimage paths a step towards safeguarding not only physical remnants, but also intangible legacies, the motions, the connections that had once made these stones resonant with life. Within their collective resolve lay an understanding of what it truly meant to be guardians. They were no longer mere preservers standing on the sidelines watching as history unfolded before them, but active participants in its continuance, a living testament that Campania's story was not fixed, a narrative forever being rewritten. They embraced this role with open hearts and minds ready to absorb lessons from their ancestors while extending compassionate touches into the world beyond Pompey's ancient embrace. At last they reached an overlook where once seers gazed upon the sea, drawing inspiration for prophecies that had shaped destinies with threads of possibility and promise, their place now silent save for their contemplative presence as night's curtain descended fully around them. The guardians sensed a profound kinship here. In this hallowed space where souls met, they found themselves not alone, but surrounded by the echoes of those who had once stood exactly likewise before nature's vast expanse, a shared human experience that transcended time and existence itself. In these moments, amidst Campania's whispers under starlit skies, our guardians pledged a renewed commitment to their sacred charge. The preservation of history was not just about maintaining what had been, but also embracing an active role in crafting tomorrow's narrative. They recognized that each step they took upon these ancient paths, and every breath drawn from Campania's storied air imbued them with a purpose greater than themselves, her calling to be the custodians of connection, not just relics preserved within cold stone walls, but living embodiments of shared humanity. Within their solemn oath lay an understanding that every person who would ever walk upon Campania's sacred grounds was invited into this timeless journey. They were all guardians in their own right, each with a story to contribute and cherish, each capable of becoming architects of empathy within the mosaic tapestry woven by human hands. It became clear that these pilgrimage paths would not only serve as conduits between past and present, but also bridges leading forward into future generations, or promise made manifest in every shared memory enriched with compassion, respect. In Chapter 16 of our narrative journey through Campania, we find ourselves, as dawn breaks across an already tranquil morning sky, a gentle awakening that mirrors a newfound realization among those who tread these hallowed paths with reverent steps and hearts full of purpose. As the light slowly unveils ancient stones etched by hands long turned to dust, our guardians sense not just the weight of history they bear, but also the lighter touch needed in their stewardship, or balance between safeguarding relics and living experiences that breathe life into them. The mosaic-covered floors beneath bare feet tell tales untold as pilgrims gather, each sharing whispers of personal connections to these sacred grounds they had once only heard in stories. The young artist with eyes like the Campanian sunset sketches vibrant dreams on her canvas using pigments drawn from local flowers, her visual echo of shared humanity that dances within their collective memories, blending past and present into a future yet unwritten, but felt deeply in every stroke. A musician strums chords resonating with Campanian air as his melody weaves through the trees, where history sleeps her siren song for lost voices to join anew on this timeless bridge between epochs, inviting listeners across all ages and cultures into a universal dance of remembrance. As fingers glide over strings like skimming stones upon time's pond, he becomes the unseen hand guiding Campania's spirit forward while tenderly preserving its soul within his sombre harmony that cradles both history and hope in one heart's melody. An elder historian, with silver threads of wisdom through her hair, passes down oral traditions to wide-eyed youth, ensuring the flame of knowledge flickers not just upon these pages, but within every mind willing to hear Campania's whispering history, a legacy that transcends written words and becomes eternally imprinted in shared experiences. She recounts tales where gods walked among mortals as equals underneath starlit skies, their laughter melding with the rustling of leaves. Each story a thread carefully woven into Campania's ongoing tapestry, a continuity that binds generations together in an unbroken chain. A local potter shaping clay as if it were his own flesh and blood spins stories alongside forms taking shape under practiced hands, each vessel a silent testament to the land's embrace of both natural beauty and human endeavor, an earthly echo resonating through Campania's soul. As he molds life from soil that has cradled empires, his craft becomes an extension of this sacred trust, for every curve sculpted on earthenware is a pledge to remember the touch of hands upon these same ancient grounds and honor their continuing bond with history's embrace, physical manifestation of Campania's ever-unfolding story. A poet whose heart beats in rhythm with distant thunderheads that roll across endless skies like rolling waves lapping against time itself, finds inspiration within the essence of place and its people to pen verses as delicate yet profound as morning dew upon Campanian flora. With each line he writes on his trusty parchment, words bloom into a fragrant bouquet that captures Campania's spirit, or poetic chronicle, where every syllable is imbued with the silent pact these guardians have made to cherish and carry forward Campania's legacy. As day wanes upon this chapter of shared humanity, a gentle breeze carries forth echoes of collective resolve, their vow that as history unfurls its tales through sleeping stones beneath the watchful gaze of twilight stars, it shall continue to inspire and be shaped by those who walk Campania's sacred paths. With each sunset comes a new promise. With every dawn rises an opportunity for guardianship, or cycle that endures as steadfastly as time itself, within these hallowed bounds of land imbued with the spirit of ages past, present joys and forthcoming dreams alike. In this sacred place, where memories are not just remembered, but reverently lived into being by every person who tread upon its soil, guardians come to understand that they too have become part of Campania's eternal legacy as much as the relics themselves, standing side by side with history's echoes. And so it is in this timeless communion, among souls and stones alike, where every heartbeat joins a symphony forged as night's velvet curtain fell upon Campania once more, a hush settled over its ancient paths and storied ruins like dew on morning grasses. The guardians gathered in the heart of Pompeii at twilight's cusp, for sacred convergence, where time seemed to pause with them as they read aloud from the parchments that had become their shared charge, a testament to Campania's enduring spirit and soulful chronicle. The latest chapter began not on paper, but in hearts young and old, tales of valorous gladiators who fought for glory under foreign emperors, yet whose bravery ignited the flame of independence that would one day burn fiercely through time's fabric to this very moment, where they stood, unified by a purpose beyond themselves. They recounted how these champions' spirits still danced in Campania's breeze, and resonated within its cobblestone streets, a reminder of the land that had once cradled their ancestors' dreams as it now nurtured new generations to uphold them anew. As they spoke, a young guardian named Lucia felt her own pulse quicken with every tale. She too was beginning to understand how deeply woven the threads of Campania's history were into their very being, how each stone underfoot and wind through olive groves carried whispers from millennia past. With trembling fingers, she traced patterns in the sand beside her elder mentor Alessandro as they joined others like them to compose further verses on parchment that would soon join an ever-growing legacy of words steeped with passion for their homeland's story. Beneath a sky painted by stars, which had silently witnessed the rise and fall of empires since time immemorial, they shared in tales not just from history books, but also law passed down through whispers on wind-borne leavest mythic paths where gods walked alongside mortals among Campania's rolling hills. They spoke reverently of Ceres, blessings upon their harvests, and of the nymph Egeria, who once whispered future into dreamer fates to those destined for greatness within these sacred bounds. As Alessandro intoned verses that intertwined with his own ancestral memoirs or tapestry, where every stanza honored deities and heroes alike, Lucia realized the profound truth. Campania's heartbeat was not just echoed by her own, but shared through all who walked its paths. The guardians felt a unity that transcended mere friendship. It bordered on kinship or collective soul bound to protect and perpetuate this land's tale for ages yet unborn, ensuring the spirit of Campania flourished even as centuries waxed and waned like phases of the moon above. Into the evening they would continue their communal song until stars themselves seemed eager, listeners their voices weaving a resonant harmony with history itself that promised to cradle these memories in its celestial isle embrace as it watched over Campania from on high, bearing witness and offering silent support for guardians like Lucia, who carried the flame of heritage within their young hearts. As Alessandro spoke, his voice a deep timbre that resonated with age-old truths, he shared how each generation had been entrusted to uphold Campania's legacy or sacred pact woven into being when first men and women decided this land was more than soil beneath their feet. It harbored the dreams of those who came before. This bond required caretakers like Lucia, gifted with an understanding that she would become as much a part of Campania's story through her contributions to its living chronicler role, not born out of duty but love for this place, where every sunset was a verse and each daybreak promised new verses in the eternal poem. The guardians, standing shoulder to shoulder as night's mantle deepened around them, felt an overwhelming sense that they were not merely custodians of history but active participants within it, a revelation borne out by their shared experiences and aspirations for Campania's future. They envisioned a world where the ancient spirit continued to thrive through education and reverence. Alessandro's parchments would be entrusted not just in his caretaker kin but also among schools, libraries, museums, anywhere souls might gather beneath Campania's ever-present gaze. Through stories of resilience that coursed through the veins of their city and countryside, Alice Lucia turned over in her armchair and Alessandro took a deep breath before continuing his tale. Into the twilight of their conversation they felt as though time had woven itself around them, creating an invisible quilt that warmed not just their bodies, but also their spirits. The guardians understood now more than ever that to honor Campania's legacy was inextricably linked with understanding and embracing its future, a delicate balance between the echoes of history and whispers for tomorrow, wrapped within each other like a double helix holding all life together. The night had crept upon them as they sat beneath an old olive tree that whispered tales older than memory itself to anyone who would listen in Campania's rolling hillsides. Alessandro spoke of the ancient amphitheaters and grand Colosseum, where echoes still danced with shadows from a distant past, or testament not just to human achievement, but also as reminders that even today they stood tall upon this land built by hands long gone yet ever present in spirit. He described the vibrant fresco of history painted on every wall, ceiling, and pathway, where Lucia's fingers traced patterns like a maestro, guiding an orchestra narrative flowing seamlessly from one age to another as if Campania herself was conductor without hands. He shared stories etched into the city's heartbeat, tales of gladiators, senators, and philosophers who once walked these very streets, where Lucia now sought refuge in thoughtful solitude each night or pilgrimage through time that had become her sanctuary from reality's unyielding march. Lucia nodded as Alessandro painted images with his words. Their shared reverence for the land was a bond deeper than blood, transcending generations and becoming an emblem of identity or sacred trust passed down like heirloom jewelry to be treasured by each new bearer. With every word spoken under that moonlit sky above Campania's terracotta rooftops, they delved further into the collective soul of this place, where dreams had taken root and flourished through centuries, or communal tapestry woven from threads both golden with prosperity and darkened by tragedy. Alessandro's voice grew softer as he spoke of Campania's resilience, how it survived the sands that once buried cities beneath their weight to be reborn like a phoenix ascending on zephyrs through time its spirit unbroken despite adversity etched into every lineament of her valleys and coastlines. Lucia felt an affirming warmth as Alessandro's voice intertwined with hers, his narrative becoming part of the living continuum that coursed within them both. Their hearts resonated together in a symphony celebrating Campania's unwavering spirit or harmony they knew only guardians like themselves could truly comprehend and cherish. Together, under this ancient tree, whose roots delved deep into the land's memory while its branches stretched towards tomorrow's sunrise with hopeful leaves, rustling promises of rebirth and renewal, they envisioned a world where Campania's spirit would continue to thrive. Alessandro spoke passionately about his latest parchment, how it was not just an account, but rather a vessel for the wisdom that time had imparted upon him. He saw himself as another guardian of this hallowed legacy or caretaker, who wished to share Campania's soul with those beyond her borders. Within their dialogue lay seeds planted deep in fertile soil, ideas and aspirations for educational sanctuaries that would become oases where thirsty minds might drink deeply from the fount of history, a place not just to learn, but to feel as if one had walked alongside ancient Romans or witnessed firsthand the fall of empires. They spoke with conviction, their voices a gentle stream flowing into rivers and streams that would carry Campania's essence beyond her horizons, where it could be cherished in every heart willing to hear her story, a tale not just told, but lived within each visitor's breath, as they traced the contours of history with fingertips across time-worn stones. And so, Lucia and Alessandro found themselves at a crossroads between yesterday's whispers in their ears and tomorrow's laughter yet to come, duality that danced within them as they shared dreams for Campania's future, where her soul might continue its eternal song. Together with every story, each memory whispered into the night air by Lucia turned her thoughtful gaze to Alessandro, whose eyes mirrored a deep connection with the soil that fed Campania's soul, a bond sewn into every word they shared as whispers against an evening breeze carrying tales from bygone ages. Imagine if our children could learn not just history books, but life stories beneath these very trees, Lucia murmured, her voice so soft it seemed to meld with the rustling leaves. Alessandro nodded slowly in agreement and replied tenderly, "Yes, my dearest friend, for knowledge must seep through every sense-touching souls as if they were there beside Caesar himself, their dreams unfurled like scrollwork across an artist's canvas, vibrant visions of interactive sites where young minds would roam freely among the shadows and whispers left by Roman senators, gladiators clashing not in blood but with words as weapons." Lucia painted this future with her words. A labyrinthine garden could mimic ancient Rome's forum. Children might argue passionately over philosophical ideals or debate the merits of different empires. Alessandro listened intently, his own ideas sprouting wings and taking flight. What about a grand amphitheater where echoes from past plays are performed? The laughter, cries, and applause could resonate through these halls, or sensory education beyond mere facts. The sun dipped lower as their conversation meandered like the Tiber itself. They spoke of preserving Campania's unique essence while inviting global curiosity to touch it with reverent hands. Our past must be a bridge, not just barriers, Alessandro insisted earnestly. We can design experiences that let our visitors leave as ambassadors for history, carrying stories of lost worlds within them long after they depart. Their words wove through the air like incense smoke from an ancient ritual, each syllable a prayer to Campania's legacy. Lucia and Alessandro stood united in vision. Their shared aspiration for this land transcended time. To be stewards of history, she sighed contemplatively, her voice barely above the chorus of cicadas at dusk. "This is more than just a dream," Alessandro affirmed with conviction that matched his wife's own passionate heartbeat for their homeland's future. "Our children and visitors will carry Campania in them, as they have always done." Their dialogue was the fertile soil from which tomorrow's ideas took root in education not confined to textbooks but lived through empathy with every stone that told 1,000 tales of joy and sorrow beneath Italian skies. As nightfall embraced Campania, Lucia's eyes sparkled under starlight, reflecting on the ancient stones they so cherished. "Our work begins not when we open doors to these places, but when our hearts embrace this journey." With a gentle smile that spoke of shared dreams and love for their heritage, Alessandro took her hand. Together in unity with memories past and hopefulness yet unborn, they rose from the ground where history slept her pair, emboldened by visions grand enough to inspire generations. Lucia turned back one last time before stepping into the night. Their plans were seeds now sown on fertile dreamscape soil as stars whispered over them in silent vigil for tomorrow's promise, a testament that Campania's soul would continue its eternal song through education and understanding, her melody not just heard but deeply felt by all who dare to listen. And so the story of Lucia and Alessandro continued as they ventured forth under moonlight with hearts full of purpose, to share, preserve, educate, for in Campania's spirit lies a timeless legacy that would continue its enchantment through every whispered dream shared on this sacred soil. In Chapter 20 of Lucia and Alessandro's tale under Campanian skies, as they stood hand in hand against a backdrop painted by twilight's first blushes to deep night velvet hues, their resolve whispered like the rustling leaves above them. The air hummed with ancient secrets waiting for hearts brave enough to seek, and listeners willing to hear echoing through time's corridors her perfect setting, where history breathed life into those who dare engage in its dance of preservation. As Lucia's fingers traced the contours of a weather-beaten signpost, her touch seemed to revive tales etched on stone, children playing by vibrant fountains that had since dried up, lovers' initial promises carved into wooden benches along cobblestone paths. Alessandro's eyes followed Lucia with an intensity born of shared history and the desire to protect it, her guardian spirit in flesh, his soul as intertwined with Campania's past as roots are with its fertile earth. Their journey had begun at dawn when they first beheld these stones that bore witness to 1,000 souls before them. Now under moonlight's tender glow, their path was clear. They were the custodians of memories and architects of tomorrow's legacy. Lucia took Alessandro through her meticulous notes on historical context she had painstakingly gathered from old texts in dusty libraries to modern scholarship that pieced together narratives long silenced by time's heavy cloak, while he showed his reverence with sketches of structures untouched since the Renaissance age, drawing a promise for future restoration. The city was alive and whispering through them, as Lucia recounted legends passed down from elders in her family about forgotten festivals once celebrated here. Alessandro would listen intently before gently suggesting ways they could recreate these events with authenticity or living tradition that breathed new life into ancient customs. They discussed the impact of tourism on Campania's cultural landscape and considered how to educate visitors not just about sightseeing but immersive experiences. Their conversations became plans, blueprints for a future where history was felt as much through touch and smell as it was seen in marble-clad facades. Within the embrace of Vesuvius, shadowy presence that loomed over Naples like an ageless sentry, Lucia and Alessandro sought out local artisans to weave history into fabric, a tapestry depicting scenes from Campanian folklore would adorn school classrooms. Traditional pottery techniques were shared with young apprentices eager for hands-on experience. They pledged support of the city's oral tradition keepers, recording tales and songs to digital archives that could echo through generations yet unborn, or fusion where technology did not erase but rather amplified Campania's heartbeat against modernity's relentless march forward. Lucia spoke often of the Acropolis Museum's efforts in preservation, inspired by their success to envision similar havens for Naples and surrounding areas, a network where every citizen could play a part. They dreamt of open days when families roamed ancient sites with Lucia's interactive guides or Alessandro's augmented reality tales that brought ruins from antiquity into vivid, personal narratives. As the first light pierced nighttime veils to touch upon their faces and awaken sleeping eyes within them both, their mission was no longer just an intention but a heartfelt pledge. They would dedicate themselves not only as protectors of Campania's soul, its stories safeguarded by every brick laid in reverence for history's grandeur. Lucia and Alessandro stepped forward with plans to enshrine the very essence of these tales into tangible experiences that could transcend time. They had found their purpose under stars above to share Campania's timeless legacy, not merely through whispers, but in a symphony felt deep within each visitor's heart. Their path was one others would follow, illuminated by the shared dream of an awakened community that honored its roots while embracing growth. They were ready to sow seeds amidst fertile soil as dawn's first light promised new beginnings in this chapter and countless chapters yet unwritten. Lucia's hand found Alessandro's once more, Their journey ahead was a tapestry of intention weaving together the threads that would bind past to present in Campania's continued eternal song. As they ventured forth under moonlight with amidst a backdrop of soft hues that painted themselves across an indigo sky, the last tendrils of darkness retreating with graceful reluctance as dawn's first light began to herald its arrival, Lucia and Alessandro felt the gentle stirring within their souls, synchronized like heartbeats echoing through time. They knew now that Campania's stories were not just tales whispered by old stones, but vital streams of life flowing into every facet of existence in Italy's southern gemstone. They could no longer merely observe from a distance as history unfolded before them, for the veil had been lifted on their purpose. Their journey thus far was one that began with an encountered discovery of Lucia's interactive guides, and Alessandro's augmented reality tales brought ruins to life in ways they never thought possible. These tools were more than mere gadgets. They became extensions of the very air, imbuing every step taken within Campania's embrace with a sense of personal discovery that transcended time itself. Lucia and Alessandro had seen history come alive before their eyes. Villas once bustling with opulent feasts, now silent witnesses to centuries past. Basilicas standing as guardians over the whispers of prayers long ago offered in faith, hope, or love. All these narratives were no longer confined within textbooks and museum walls, but became personal tales intricately woven into each visitor's heart. As they stood shoulder to shoulder on a balcony that once served as the observatory for ancient philosophers pondering under starlit skies, Lucia reached out with her hand entwined in Alessandro's and felt his pulse quicken in anticipation of shared endeavors ahead. The warmth against their skin was not just physical, but a reaffirming promise that together they would carry forward Campania's legacy through experiences never before imagined, allowing others to touch the fabric of history as one might stroke the delicate petals of an ancient vine with reverence and wonder. Their vision for tomorrow was etched into every sun or zero T kissing their cheeks, a world where Campania's soul did not merely survive, but thrived, its essence celebrated in ways that honored the past, while embracing innovation as key to growth and understanding. They imagined visitors walking through reconstructed ancient streets, Lucia's guides whispering stories into their ears with each step, Alessandro's augmented reality bringing scenes of daily life from centuries ago right before one's eyes, children laughing in amphitheater playgrounds and artisans perfecting craftsmanship that shaped civilization. They spoke often beneath the boughs of olive trees, whispering secrets to their future selves about plans for interactive experiences where visitors could converse with virtual embodiment historians who lived through Campania's golden age or artisans crafting masterpieces that would stand as timeless testimonies. These conversations flowed like wine, rich and intoxicating, discussions of a grand plaza dedicated to the region's cultural fusion where music from centuries past could be experienced in its purest form, alongside modern interpretative performances or symphony for all ages that played on endlessly under sunlit skies. Lucia's hands danced through Alessandro's hair as they sketched blueprints and designs. Her eyes were mirror pools, reflecting the myriad colors of a future where history was not just known but felt, experienced with every sense of touches that resonated like chords in an eternal melody. And though challenges loomed on their horizon, as ever-present shadows cast by those who doubted or feared change, Lucia and Alessandro's conviction remained unshaken, for they knew the true value of Campania lay not just within its ancient walls, but in its capacity to inspire hearts, young and old. The night before their plans came into action was marked with a quiet celebration and evening where friends, family, locals, and newfound allies gathered under twinkling stars that seemed like silent witnesses themselves. Stories of hope laced the air as tales passed from Lucia's lips to Alessandro's eager ears, stories not just for entertainment, but ones brimming with lessons about community spirit, resilience, and unity, the very qualities they hoped would define Campania into its next era. As dawn broke over a horizon still painted in strokes of coral and gold by the remnants of nightfall's embrace, Lucia looked toward her companion with eyes alight, with dream fueled. As dawn broke over a horizon still painted in strokes of coral and gold by the remnants of nightfall's embrace, Lucia looked toward her companion with eyes alight, with dream-fueled aspirations for Campania's future. The gentle rise of their breathing synced as they lay side by side on a bed adorned with fabrics that told tales from centuries past or tactile history beneath them and around them, offering whispers to those who could listen. Alessandro stretched his arms above his head, feeling the day's potential course through him like an invigorating stream of energy as Lucia reached over with a soft hand on her partner's back, her touch grounding Alessandro in their shared vision for Campania and reminding them both that every dream woven into reality was also threaded deeply within themselves. Lucia closed her eyes, taking the first steps toward letting go of yesterday's hurdles while embracing tomorrow's promise, as she murmured a wishful chant known to few outside their circular mantra for transformation and renewal that had been passed down through generations in Campania. The air carried with it an ethereal melody, the notes of which seemed crafted by hands touched not just by skilled artisans, but also kissed by divine inspirations, as Lucia's fingers moved to a rhythm only her heart could hear, a harmonious blend between their shared dream and Alessandro's unwavering support. Their conversation, often steeped in the language of creation itself, flowed effortlessly from one topic to another. They spoke not just with words, but through themes that painted visions across Lucia's mind or tapestry, where each thread was a colorful possibility and every knot an obstacle overcome. Lucia shared tales of the old world's grandeur, recounting stories as if she were breathing life back into Campania with her very voice. Alessandro listened intently, his mind painting alongside hers, her silent guardian against forgetting or fearing their path forward amidst a sea of resistance. Within Lucia's dream-laden narratives lay the seeds for change, sustainable farming practices that honored the earth as much as they did its bounty, architectural marvels marrying functionality with beauty to protect and inspire generations yet unborn, all inspired by their shared reverence for Campania's soul. Their dialogue transitioned effortlessly into plans of action. Every detail was a covenant between them and the land they sought to rejuvenate, each choice made with respectful nods from Alessandro as he absorbed Lucia's vision, or communion that promised more than just success, but an enduring legacy. As morning light filtered through ancient trees, their silhouettes merged against a backdrop of awakening nature. The land itself seemed to respond in kind with rustling whispers and chirping songs, as if it understood its role not only as setting for dreams, but also participant or sacred partner in rewriting Campania's story. Lucia's voice, a soft melody threaded through morning mist, called forth the essence of their shared ambition with every word she whispered to Alessandro. He knew these were not idle words upon waking, but commitments that would ripple outward like waves embracing shores, or promise made in unity. As Lucia lay her head on Alessandro's shoulder, a gentle caress for his dreamer's mind as well as heart, they both knew their journey was not just about transforming land, but also touching lives across the span of time. Campania would grow anew under the mad bastion, where nature and civilization danced in harmony. And so Lucia closed her eyes once more, this time to dream deeper into herself before she opened again with renewed vigor, for a world still tethered by yesterday's chains yet unshackled through their love of beauty and the betterment it could bring forth her future, where each soul in Campania was as entwined within its history as they were to shape what lay ahead. As morning light spilled into Lucia's eyes, her heart swelled with hope that mirrored a sunrise sky. This chapter of their tale would see them step from dreamers into Dorser love story set against the canvas of Campania's awakening spirit. Alessandro felt a gentle warmth caress his cheeks as Lucia's embrace eased him from sleep, her touch light yet firmer, tangible echo of their shared dreaming and promises made in whispered tones to one another the night before. As he nestled further into her arms on this new morning, Alessandro closed his eyes once more, allowing himself a moment's respite within Lucia's loving presence while she worked quietly around him, her hands skillfully weaving through fabrics and tools that spoke of their craft as landscape architects. The sun had barely crowned the horizon when they began to discuss plans for Campania, where together they sought not just to mold its physical contours, but also touch upon deeper cultural transformations inspired by Lucia's grandmother's teaching legacy that wove itself into her artistry and ambition. Alessandro listened intently as she detailed their vision of integrating the natural beauty with human ingenuity, a harmonious balance between green canopies and thoughtfully designed walkways where people could gather to share stories under ancient olive trees, whose roots ran deep through time itself. Lucia's voice carried both passion and wisdom as she painted pictures of communal gardens that would celebrate Campania's rich history, each bed named after heroes or moments in the annals of local lore, a place where children could learn about their heritage while playing among flowers like wildflowers once adorned by Romulus' own father. Alessandro admired Lucia not only for her knowledge, but also for how she envisioned Campania as a living museum, its history encapsulated within the very landscape they would help to create, a place where nature and culture were intertwined in an eternal dance of growth and renewal. As Alessandro absorbed Lucia's dream-filled plans, he found himself drawn into their mission with every detail she described. Her love for Campania was as palpable as the Italian sun itself that bathed them each morning. He understood now how his role went beyond mere labor. It became a partnership in shaping an environment where humanity and nature flourished side by side, much like Lucia's grandmother had done during her own time in Campania's history as a young apprentice to the greats of landscape architecture. The couple spent hours discussing their approach or fusion of sustainable practices with artistic design that would ensure future generations could enjoy and learn from what they were about to create, just as Lucia's grandmother had once done in Alessandro's own youthful memories when he first learned the craft. They sketched ideas on paper before the mat piazza for communal events, with stone benches carved into shapes that told tales of myth and legend, terraced gardens where vibrant flowers would rise against a backdrop of cascading waterfalls, their waters whispering stories through each droplet. Their dialogue soon turned to the more practical aspect, securing materials from local artisans whose hands bore witness to Campania's own history, sourcing native plants that would thrive in harmony with the land and not impose upon it, as foreign species had sometimes done before. They debated paths that wound through groves of olives and lemon trees while ensuring they provided shade during hot afternoons, or balance between sunlight for growth and comfort for those who walked beneath their boughs. Lucia shared tales from her grandmother's diary, detailing how landscapes were once a canvas of change in Campania's own history. They discussed the importance of reflecting this legacy through every aspect of their design, while promoting ecological responsibility and preserving biodiversity. Alessandro felt his spirit soar with Lucia as she recounted stories that had been passed down to her, tales where landscapes were not just settings but characters in Campania's ongoing narrative story. They would now add their namesake chapters to through thoughtful and tender craftsmanship. As the morning progressed into a full-blown day of sunshine, Alessandro realized that Lucia's aspirations were not just for beauty but also hope. She saw in each planting bed or pathway an opportunity to foster community pride, or place where Campanians could gather and relive the shared history through festivals celebrating their cultural roots. He admired her vision, seeing it as a way of honoring Lucia's ancestors while paving the road for future generations in this land they both loved deeply. Together, Alessandro and Lucia planned to hold workshops as sunlight gently caressed their faces through Lucia's carefully curated plantings of lavender and rosemary. Alessandro felt a serene sense of purpose that had been missing from his work for years. The air was filled with whispers of history, a testament to the land they were nurturing back into life, as if guiding nature itself through their hands. The pair embarked on designing communal spaces where people could gather, weaving in elements that celebrated Campania's diverse heritage and traditions while fostering a sense of unity among all who shared the land with them. Their first step was to create an amphitheater nestled between two mature olive groves. Its terraces would offer intimate settings for storytelling, music, and dance, a reflection of Campania's soul through performance art that had echoed in these hills since ancient times. Lucia envisioned pathways dappling the sunlight with patterns reminiscent of traditional Roman mosaics. Each step told a silent tale, as if inviting visitors to trace their fingers along history's fabric woven into walkway stones and earth itself. Alessandro, inspired by Lucia's artistic passion for heritage preservation through landscaping, began sketching designs that would incorporate native plant species within the paths, or living mosaic of flora, where each leaf could tell a story from epochs past or present alike. Together they planned community garden beds with medicinal and culinary plants once grown by Campania's ancestors, creating not only an urban oasis for healing and harvest, but also imbuing everyday life in the city-state's heartland with a taste of ancient sustenance. They dreamt of local chefs crafting dishes from these herbs that would make diners feel as if they had feasted alongside Roman legionaries or during festivals celebrating Bacchus himself, their senses awakening to the flavors rooted in history and tradition. As weeks turned into months under Alessandro's seasonal expositor, guardian of temporal rhythms that dictated when plants would flourish best amidst a backdrop of changing seasons, they established an educational wing within their sanctuary where the community could learn about regional biodiversity, ecological responsibility, and how to cultivate land in harmony with nature's cycles. The project began drawing attention far beyond Campania's borders as Alessandro shared Lucia's vision on social media platforms that carried tales of their work across seas. Soon others were inspired to replicate this model elsewhere, creating a ripple effect where history and modernity danced in unity hand in hand. Alessandro realized the legacy they had begun would outlast them both as Lucia took on leadership roles within cultural organizations that celebrated Campanian identity through artistic expressions or a living museum of their work, echoing with stories told beneath canopies and along cobblestone paths laid in memory's image. Within the amphitheater's embrace, Lucia hosted gatherings where elders shared first-hand accounts that Alessandro recorded to preserve for posterity, a testament of time wrapped within earthen walls built by their own hands. As they crafted a symphony of sights and scents through every aspect of the landscape design, each element was imbued with purpose. Shade from lemon trees during summer afternoons provided respite for weary souls seeking solace in nature's embrace, while vibrant flower beds bloomed to celebrate harvests when they were most needed. Their shared dream became a living legacy, where each planted seed and carefully positioned stone told the story of their home, a narrative that invited visitors from all corners of Campania back into its heartland, as if returning through time itself in search for connection to roots long cherished yet forgotten amidst modernity's pace. As Alessandro laid down his shovel after a day spent under Lucia's guiding hand, he realized the journey they embarked on was more than just landscaping. It was about crafting an environment where every whisper of wind through grasses and rustle in leaves resonated with echoes from history. Together, Alessandro and Lucia had not only transformed a piece of Campania, but also ensured its stories would continue to be told for generations, her sanctuary that cradled the past while tenderly embracing tomorrow those who sought refuge in nature's timeless beauty or simply wished to walk through history. And as they stood together, hand in hand under a sky painted with hues of twill as twilight draped its velvety cloak over Campania, Alessandro and Lucia stood side by side in their garden of remembrance, their masterpiece born from love for nature and heritage alike. The sky's palette had shifted to deep blues with just the right touches of orange as stars began peppering above them like pinholes through which daylight seemed trapped, a gentle nightly lullaby that promised restful sleep yet invited contemplation on their shared dream woven into living earth. They had come so far since planting those first seeds in the rich soil of home and harder place, where history breathed beneath layers not just of topsoil, but also time's dusty mantle that once blanketed an entire civilization revered for their horticultural prowess. Alessandro's hands still bore traces from his days spent cultivating life amidst ruins, her delicate balance between reviving the past and nurturing growth in all forms, both flora and human spirit alike. Lucia's guidance had been unwaffable at times. Their shared vision required her to often confront modernity's relentless march against nature herself, a struggle that demanded patience as enduring as the ancient stones they sought inspiration from. Yet every obstacle met and conquered only strengthened their resolve if their labor not just for themselves, but also an offering of reverence back to ancestors whose whispers were carried through leaves in gentle breezes now, a continuation of timeless dialogue between past and present. Tonight's serenade was led by the crickets, symphony punctuated with occasional hooting from wise old owls perched atop Campania's ancient oaks, or natural chorus that seemed to hum in harmony with Alessandro's and Lucia's hearts. As they stood there, hand in hand under a sky painted not just by the sun, but also their dream to the narrative of conservation interlaced within beauty's allure, It felt as if history itself was encircling them in an embrace that transcended time and space, or protective shield against forgetfulness. Alessandro had a sudden urge to trace the outlines etched into his palms by soil long cradled within Campania's arms, patterns reminiscent of those unearthed during their archaeological excursions, which now lived anew in gardens they tended. Lucia's touch was comforting as always. Her fingers were akin to the tenderness with which she had once coaxed life from seedlings, and tonight's caress promised reassurance that their shared dream would not wilt under modernity's shadow, but rather blossom into something of eternal value, an oasis where one could find solace in nature's embrace or a connection to the routes deeply entwined with human history. Their garden had become more than just an assemblage of plants and stones. It was now their legacy, each element purposefully placed as if they were articulating words into sculpture, an open book inviting readers from every walk of life not only to admire but also learn the narrative threaded through Campania's soil. Their story continued with the visitors imbibing tales that Alessandro and Lucia had lovingly curated, stories now part history lesson, part environmental plea for sustainability in a world where nature's voice often went unheard amidst industries, dinter garden an echo of their own voices resonating through ages. As the night deepened and stars claimed dominion over skies once more enlivened by daylight, Alessandro felt Lucia's gaze upon him with a soft intensity that spoke volumes without uttering sound. It was acknowledgment, from soul to heart, or silent vow of continued partnership in their mission. Together they had not just landscaped, but immortalized memories and wisdom through living art, creating sanctuaries where one could find refuge within the folds of time itself, as if returning backward along roads once traveled by ancestors whose spirits remained interlaced with every leafy bower. In this place, where past met present at their feet, was a reminder that history is not static. It breathes and grows, evolves, but also endures within the seeds they had sown in more ways than one could perceive by mere sight alone. Each visitor left with an intimate understanding of legacy's power to weave through generations like roots seeking water. As Alessandro held Lucia close under a sky adorned now fully, as Alessandro and Lucia watched from their garden bencher tapestry of twilight hues painted by nature's own hand, cool breeze whispered through the leaves, as if carrying secrets passed down through generations to those who would listen. The night seemed a living entity itself, cradling them in its tranquillity and lulling their thoughts into peaceful reverie about times long gone but never truly forgotten within these hallowed grounds they called home. "The first time I saw this place," Alessandro began softly to Lucia as he caressed her cheek with a tenderness that matched the gentle sway of willow branches above them, "I felt like we had stumbled upon something much greater than just land and trees." His words carried weight beyond their immediate context, and acknowledgment not only of what they cherished, but also where it all began. Lucia smiled with eyes reflecting a depth as timeless as the soil beneath her feet. "It's true that we have nurtured this garden into something special here," she responded in kind, brushing away strands of hair from Alessandro's face to reveal skin etched by years spent under sun and moon. "But it is also about what came before us, about the stories carried on our ancestors' shoulders that have walked these same paths." Their shared mission had always been twofold: to create a living legacy of beauty intertwined with history, where every plant told tales as ancient as life itself, and each stone pathway was imbued with echoes from days when their names hadn't yet come into being. They sought not only to honor the past, but also inspire future generations by demonstrating that a harmonious existence between humanity and nature is possible, even essential for survival in an age where such balance seemed ever more elusive elsewhere. As they settled deeper beneath the comforting embrace of their oak tree's shade, Alessandro recounted tales he had learned from Lucia's grandmother, a storyteller who could summon images so vivid that one might have thought she wielded magic at her fingertips. Here was a woman whose spirit seemed to transcend time, he said dreamily, lost in the memory of his beloved kin as they shared anecdotes and wisdom by firelight during nights like these when history felt most tangible and every shadow held significance. Each light that flickered on a leaf spoke volumes. Their conversations were often punctuated with references to Lucia's ancestors who had once tended this very garden after the land was cleared and before it became overrun by industry's relentless march, testament to their forebears' connection not just as individuals, but also as stewards of Earth. They understood that we are all part of something larger, Alessandro mused aloud while tracing the veined patterns in a nearby fern with his thumb, and it is our duty to listen more attentively than ever before. Lucia nodded thoughtfully at her partner's reflection on their shared lineage. And what we do here, she whispered back like an incantation against the encroaching dark of forgotten times, is a silent dialogue with our pastor promise to carry forth its essence. They were custodians not just in name but spiritually as well, guardians who dared believe that, even amidst rapid change and loss, routes could still find purchase. The couple's most profound conversations occurred during these twilight hours, when the boundaries between now and then blurred into a shared experience or confluence where time itself seemed to fold inward upon itself like an origami lotus resting its petals beneath starlight's embrace. It was here, at this sacred nexus of past, present, and future, they found themselves most vulnerable yet invincible, their hearts resonant with the truth that all history is alive within them if only one knows how to look to feel it pulsing through veins like lifeblood renewed. As night's velvety mantle deepened, Alessandro reached for Lucia's hand and held her close as their breath mingled in a harmony of shared purpose. The garden around them was more than just floor, it encapsulated centuries within its very core. It harbored the whispers between lovers long since gone, but whose spirits lingered nonetheless, like an enduring perfume on ancient blooms that refused to fade with time's passage. Within this living museum of nature and narrative, where history was not simply preserved or displayed in chapter 27, as dawn began to peek through the heavy curtains of night, and its first gentle ray caressed their skin with promise, Alessandro turned toward Lucia, whose eyes held a universe in the mirror reflection not only of love, but also of histories untold. As they stood rooted on this sacred ground, where time folded upon itself like waves crashing against ancient shores, the couple felt an overwhelming sense of purpose that transcended their own existence and wove into something greater than themselves, a thread connecting them to generations past, whose echoes danced invisibly between each other. The garden around Alessandro and Lucia was not merely a collection of plants, but rather a living archive, where the soil itself bore witness to centuries passed through its roots and tangled deep beneath their feet. Here, memories took shape as ghostly forms that flitted among leaves, rustling with secrets, spirits of lovers who had once traced paths like them in love and in pain, celebration and mourning under the same moonlit sky now shared by Alessandro's eyes and Lucia's tender gaze. They wandered together through rows that seemed to whisper stories when brushed with passing feet. They felt a presence among these spectral shadows, a resonance of timeless love, undiminished despite the ephemeral nature of life itself. It was as if each petal and leaf held its own tale, waiting for one who could perceive their language beyond mere sight or touch to unfold before them like delicate pages in a book that needed no words, because every heartbeat told stories within themselves, a soft love triumphing against the ravages of time when most others had forgotten. Their hands found each other as they moved through this living museum, and with Alessandro's steady touch warming Lucia's skin like sunlight on water, their souls felt a kinship to all who came before them, a connection that transcended the mere physical realm where love had bloomed in defiance of time itself. They paused by an ancient oak at its heart, whose branches seemed to cradle stars fallen from the night sky. Beneath it lay stones worn smooth as if touched often, each carving a testament to promises made and broken under this very tree's watchful gaze through seasons, untold or silent sentinel guarding over tender whispers of love that resonated with Alessandro's soul. Amidst the verdant hues around them, where every leaf seemed etched in shades from past to present, Lucia spoke words, as if she could hear their ancestors' voices guiding her, a melody woven through time itself, and together they murmured a pact of remembrance for those who had once loved here. Their own love was but one note within this grand symphony that spanned lifetimes, echoing in the very air as if their breaths could stir it awake with every exhale shared between them, a communion where time became not a line to traverse forward or retreat backward upon, but instead an ocean they sailed together into uncharted depths of understanding. They came across statues and fountains, each bearing inscriptions in languages long forgotten, that Alessandro's heart understood without need for translation or knowing smile on his lips as Lucia traced her fingers along the cool stone beneath hers, where countless others had sought solace or celebration at some point of their own journey. It was here, amidst these relics and whispering winds carrying tales beyond spoken word, that they found themselves most vulnerable yet invincible, hearts beating in unison as one with the pulse of history itself, a testament to love's power enduring through ages when many had believed it lost. As daylight slowly claimed its due place, Alessandro lifted Lucia's hand tenderly, and together they watched golden fingers brush against dew-kissed leaves, a gesture not just of affection, but also an acknowledgment that love was a force beyond eras or empires, immutable as the mountains that held witness to seasons marching onwards. In their shared silence there existed volumes worth, tomes in understanding and empathy for all who had loved here before them, where every touch whispered stories of joy and sorrow intertwined like vines upon ancient trellis, or testament to love's relentless quest through the Labyrinth Vori. And so, with hearts swelled by an unspoken oath that they would honor these spirits as kin in their own way, Alessandro and Lucia took a final silent vow beneath the watchful eyes of statues whose lips could no longer weep or laugh or pledge to carry forward as twilight deepened into a velvety night and stars began to prickle through the heavens like silver threads woven upon dark fabric. Alessandro took Lucia's hand once more under that same ancient oak tree where they had shared so many whispered secrets. The cool breeze carried away their words of dream-laden vows made in hushed reverence to those who came before them, their unspoken promises echoing through the centuries, as if imbued with magic from forgotten epochs, when love's essence was believed lost amidst tales too grim for mortal hearts. Alessandro looked into Lucia's eyes, a mirror of stars themselves, and saw therein reflections not just of their own souls, but also the countless others whose lives had been touched by this sacred place beneath its boughs, each pairing etching out love's indelible mark upon history. And with her gaze locked in his heart, he felt a profound connection to every past and future soul who might cross their path on similar moonlit evenings as they had spent together here today. The couple strolled hand in hand along the cobblestone paths that circled the park's edge, a labyrinth of experiences, memories, hopes entwining with every stone and blade of grass beneath their feet, all partaking in love's eternal dance within this hallowed ground. As they walked, Alessandro recounted stories he had learned from old librarians who passed through the park to share tales about its history, how it was once a gathering place for scholars and poets seeking solace or celebration at some point of their own journey, how whispers in these woods were as numerous as leaves, each one carrying fragments of joy and sorrow that had been shared by lovers over the ages. Lucia listened intently to Alessandro's tales with a serenity born from knowing they walked on sacred ground, where time seemed suspended like dew upon spiderweb threads in early mourner place, untouched not just by hands, but also spirits, as if history itself had chosen this refuge for its most precious moments. Her fingers gently traced the patterns of ancient runes etched into a weathered statue's base beside them. Each symbol spoke to her heart without words, telling stories that resonated across Lifit 01 Vesser, silent conversation between souls and stone, where every touch upon these markers was an acknowledgment of love's power enduring through ages when many had believed it lost. As they continued their promenade past the park's oldest treehouse perched precariously atop a gnarled oak, Alessandro recounted legends told by elders about star-crossed lovers who once sought refuge here, their love as forbidden and fierce as any feuding noble house. With each tale of passionate defiance against societal norms whispered through the rustling canopy above them, Alessandro felt a kinship to these souls, their spirits intertwined with his own in this sacred grove where history had been etched into every ring and route. When they reached an unassuming bench that seemed almost inconspicuous amongst its breath-frenner, silent guardian of countless forgotten moments shared by anonymous pairs who once came here to reconnect after long separations or say goodbye as loved ones departed this world for the next, Alessandro and Lucia sat down, allowing themselves a moment's rest in stillness. Here they spoke not with words, but through glances, or language of love that transcended ages, where each look carried volumes worth tomes, without uttering syllables or sentences. As night deepened its embrace around them, and the moon reached her zenith, casting silvered rays across their faces like beams from a celestial lamp overhead, Alessandro took Lucia's hand gently in his own as they stood to leave this place of shared history, their footsteps echoing softly through empty pathways where only remnants of laughter and tears could still linger upon the air. With every step away from beneath those ancient oaks, Alessandro knew he was taking Lucia back into her world, but also forward to their own future together, with an inner journey that would be written in love's eternal script as much on his heartstrings as any stone-carved epitaph could ever hope to achieve. And when at last they arrived home, the key turning with familiarity into Lucia's abode, and she opening her arms for him like a haven from all worldly concerns, Alessandro felt not just welcome but also cherished, an unspoken pledge. As Alessandro and Lucia descended from their secluded hillside retreat beneath ancient oaks where time seemed to stand still, they carried with them a serenity that only such moments of connection could imbue upon two souls wandering through life, towed for a tranquillity amplified by the moon's gentle ascent and her silvered beams. With each tender glance exchanged between them in these final hours beneath night's velvet canopy, they reaffirmed their love not with grand declarations, but simply looking into one another's eyes felt like a testament to years of shared dreams woven from the very fabric of trust and understanding that had always bound them. As Alessandro navigated Lucia through her familiar garden pathway leading home, he sensed an echoing silence where once laughter resided, a stark reminder that this idyllic chapter was drawing to a close. The empty paths were haunted by the whispers of time's passage and memories yet unmade. Here in these moments before dawn would break their hold on night, Alessandro resolved within his heart's quiet chambers not just to cherish what they had shared but also to embrace whatever tomorrows might unfold. Finally reaching her doorstep, Lucia turned towards him with a smile that spoke of comfort and anticipation or promise in the language she knew so well. As Alessandro placed his hand upon hers tenderly, as he offered an affectionate kiss on their cheeks, it was clear to any observer they might still be standing within this shared sanctuary where only those dearest are ever meant to dwell together, even if just for a while longer before the sun chased away the moon's gentle glow and awakened them from sweet reverie. Entering her abode with care so as not to disturb an echo of tranquillity that lingered within each corner, Alessandro took his first steps into their shared home, taking in its familiar comforter place where every nook held a story whispered by faded wallpaper and well-thumbed books nestled on end tables. He paused at the threshold before proceeding further with reverence that he was not simply entering but returning to roots from whence his love for Lucia had sprouted, intertwining its very essence within every brick laid upon her family's old foundations. The door closed behind him as though sealing away their shared past and closing off the world beyond in a way that only such intimacy can achieve, a shield against time's ceaseless march forward, while they reveled together for just one last night beneath starlight, nestling between them like warmth within an embrace. As Alessandro sank onto his favorite chair near Lucia's bedside, he took a deep breath that seemed to draw in the essence of their shared history, a tapestry woven with threads both golden and dark, where love remained as constant, unwavering through every hue imaginable. Lucia returned from her own room carrying 2 cups, steaming warmth between mugs embossed with delicate floral patterns. The clink of porcelain upon wood was a sound that never lost its comfort to Alessandro's symphony, playing softly as though whispering secrets only they understood. As she handed him one, he accepted it gratefully and took his place beside her on their bedside table, where together with Lucia had made many nights just like this before, but tonight felt different somehow, pregnant with the promise of new beginnings, even as cherished memories nestled close to heartstrings still vibrating from today's tender exchanges. With her delicate hands wrapped around his own and a shared sigh passing between them that seemed like parting words, they closed their eyes, letting dreamscapes unfold or journey not of sight, but sensation, where the very air whispered with echoes of bygone days, blending seamlessly into visions both fantastical and tender. As sleep embraced Alessandro's weary form under Lucia's soft coverings, his heart knew without doubt that this night was as much their love story continuing to unfold beneath the stars as it had been yesterday or any day before, a perpetual dance of souls entwined in silent understanding beyond mere language. And when at last morning's first light gently coaxed them awake, Alessandro looked into Lucia's eyes and saw a reflection not just of the person he loved but also of his own hopes for their future, towed through a constellation pattern forming before him that promised endless journeys yet to come. As they stood side by side at her door,